Now the fight of the night is Jack Hermansson versus Joe Pyfer. Be like Joe Pyfer. Um, we're looking at Jack Hermansson. I'm gonna say it. I'm sure you're gonna say it too. He just feels like a gatekeeper at this point. So many big names in that division. I just don't see Jack Hermansson really being a guy that can compete at this point. He wants to take top mount, but I'm not impressed with his wrestling. I'm really not impressed with his wrestling. He takes lots of unnecessary movement and punches that he's just punching the air. I want to say all this extra movement and stuff is going to gas him out quicker, but God, he has a decent gas tank. He really does have a decent gas tank. Um, Still, I think all those movements are unnecessary, and you can get caught with any of these fake punches. You're just leaving yourself open, very open to counters, especially at what I was just saying. He overextends. He takes these wild punches where he just tries to get you, and when he's reaching and you're bending at the hips, your recoil is not going to be as fast. If you're staying back and you're throwing your punches forward, you're still protecting yourself. When you overextend like that, man, you're just asking for it. Uh, he's had great tests though. Like this guy's fought the best of the best. Delize, Strickland, Vittori. He's got wins over Curtis and Gastelum, which are big names. I wouldn't say they're great fighters. Um, but this dude's he's battle tested, so he's got that going for him. He's the ranked fighter. Joe Pyfer, a KO power, and possibly the best KO power in the entire UFC. One of the hardest hitters. He's got good foot movement. He's got that mentality that's like, I'm going to get that extra second of holding you in a chokehold or take one more punch at you when you're on the ground. Just wants to inflict pain on people. Like, that's just this dude. He wants to hurt you. Jack Hermansson's like your buddy. Um, and this is a fight for Hermansson he's kind of Hermansson at this point. Pyfer, he has to win this fight. I mean, the hype train for Pyfer is just off the rails. And looking at this division, I don't know if he ever gets to the top. I don't see it personally with the names and people that are still coming up. But to continue this trajectory, he has to win this fight. If he loses to Hermansson, that train stops really, really quick. I'm curious to see what you think.
So this is one of the fights that I felt bipolar about. When it was first announced, I went through the stage of this is an absolute slaughter. This is just putting Jack Hermansson out to pasture. But as I started doing my research and I started thinking about it and time passed and all that good stuff, I'm like, man, this is really kind of tough once again. And maybe I'm just overthinking, overanalyzing, whatever you want to call it. But here are kind of my issues with this fight. So, as you kind of alluded to earlier, when you look at who Jack Hermansson has fought and who he's lost to, you're like, oh, well, there's no shame in losing to those people. But I guess the stark contrast of who he's won, like in his last, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In his last 7, let's go 8 because it's going to further prove the point. In his last 8 fights, he's won 3 of those fights, and he's won against Chris Curtis, Edmund Shabazian, and Kelvin Gastelum. I'm not going to go in on Kelvin Gastelum after the last betting show that we had
I
Kelvin
want to.
Gastelum
I
with
want
the
to so
fight
bad.
on. I'm going to let the man walk. Jared Cannonier, no shame in losing to Jared Cannonier, especially getting knocked out in round 2. No shame in losing to Vittori. There is shame in losing to Shabazian in 2021. Shabazian, I get, was built up as like the great hype of that division, but it really didn't last that long. And by the time Hermansson met him in 2021, having a win over Shabazian, he had already been exposed. It's not really getting me going. The fight with Hamzat was just a wrestling match, so I included that, but that's my bad because it was just pure wrestling. Still stands that he got his butt kicked, though. Let's just say that. Lost to Sean Strickland. We get it. Chris Curtis, not an impressive win. Just isn't. Roman Dolidze losing to him. I'm trying not to be a revisionist and, react to what happened so recently, but I'm starting to wonder if, losing to Roman Dolidze might be a bad sign. Once again, try not to read too much into what just happened last week, but man, Dolidze did not look good. And he got destroyed in round 2 by Dolidze. But I do like Joe Pyfer overall as like an actual fighter. I'm a fan of his. He has been intriguing to me. He has gotten my interest. I have been rooting for him since I've seen him on Contender Series. But here's where we start to run into issues. I try not to be a hipster. I try not to get mad when obscure things like Joe Pyfer I like turn into like a movement and whatnot. But Joe Pyfer is kind of like you find that nice little, I don't know, burger spot, coffee spot, whatever little hole in the wall thing you have to yourself that you really enjoy. That you're like, damn, I'd really like to share this with somebody, but I know as soon as I tell like a friend or a family member, this place is going to blow up and it's going to lose what I like about it in the first place. That's kind of how I feel about Joe Pyfer. As soon as I started liking Joe Pyfer and following him, I'm starting to get concerned by how much hype he's getting. Like being on Joe Rogan and talking about how he's beaten the UFC's punching power computation bullshit or whatever. And it's
Yeah.
just giving me shades of Francis Ngannou hits like a Ford Escort bullshit. That's just driving me crazy and starting to get really off the rails to where I'm like you mentioned this. Is he going to live up to this hype? Because now it's reached these ridiculous levels, just like it did with Francis Ngannou right before he got his ass handed to him in the first Stipe fight and was made to look human, right before he had a boring-ass 15-minute stare-off with Derek Lewis. And I really hope that's not the direction we're heading with Joe Pyfer, because 185 is another division in desperate need of somebody to break the monotony, to break the mold, and kind of step up and create some excitement and some new and interesting matchups. So I am optimistic about that. I'm just a little worried because when he first was on the Contender Series, I believe he's been on twice now, but at least one of those times, I know for a fact he got slammed by Dustin Stoltzfus and lost because he got slammed because he broke his arm because he braced the wrong way on the ride down. Now, Jack Hermansson's not exactly a high amplitude takedown guy. He's not really going to do much slamming, so that kind of makes me a little at ease in that regard. He's going to play it safe. He's a pretty boring guy. And there's nothing wrong with singles and doubles and, trips and all that, and that's great, and I love it. But what I'm saying is he's not going to be putting Pyfer in these awkward, like brute force, just power bomb, using raw strength situations where he could potentially get his arm broken like he did against Stoltzfus. He shouldn't be engaged in, like those Daniel Cormier, you're about to fly on air DC type takedowns. That's not Hermansson's game. And Pyfer definitely has the decided striking advantage. So if Hermansson's smart and he's game planning accordingly, he's going to try to really force the takedowns. And that's the biggest issue I have with Pyfer is I don't really know too much about his ground game other than, like I said, the arm break situation. So I'm kind of curious to see how he's going to deal with a guy who, if he's smart and he's planning properly, should know that his main way to win this fight is by any means necessary, Malcolm X style, getting it to the canvas. So I'm hoping his takedown defense will hold up. He'll be able to keep it standing. He'll recognize that, him as Joe Pyfer has that striking advantage because Hermansson's garbage at striking, just absolutely terrible. I can't say enough bad things about it, and I hope I never see it striking again. But anyway, I'm hoping he recognizes it. He definitely has the power. His last fight was a sub win, but that was against Abdul Razak Al Hassan, who, if he's still on the roster, should not be. That guy really made a career out of nothing, and I can't stand that guy either. And I hope he's off the roster because he's dropped so many fights and been so brutally finished. He's a meme now, and he deserves it. But anyway, he got that arm triangle finish just because it presented itself. Kind of like the Molly McCann Belbita fight last week. He has beaten the hell out of the guy on the feet, had his way with him, and just like in the last few, minutes, seconds, whatever, saw an easy out and it was given to him and he took it. Fair play to him. So I don't really think that's an indication he is some great grappler and he's just hiding it because his striking's better. I just think it was kind of an opportunity presents itself situation. So I'm going to be safe on this. Actually, no, I'm not, because if it does go to decision, that leads me to believe Hermansson's going to win. Joe Pyfer, I'm wondering how he's going to handle the potential for a 25-minute main event. I believe this is his first main event. I don't know that previously he's ever been prepared for and expected to potentially go a full 5 rounds for 25 minutes of total fight. So that does actually make me concerned as I say it out loud, that if this goes past probably the third, obviously you can comfortably make it to the third, because that's what he's accustomed to. But if it starts to go into fourth, fifth round territory, I start to get concerned about Pyfer. But overall, I like him because the money line's not great for Pyfer at minus 258. Hermansson's the favorite. The underdog at plus 210. So I'm not hating Pyfer by KO TKO at a plus 100. Hopefully it stays around there and it doesn't close in to where you're going to basically make no profit. I would not put money on him by sub. Once again, do not be fooled by the fact he won his last fight by sub. I don't think Pyfer's that type of guy. I watched that fight against Abdul Razak live. It just happened to present itself, and it was so easy he took it. I don't think it's a regular aspect of his game, so don't take the bait. And then decision, yeah, it's good odds at plus 650. But once again, I just don't see it if it lasts past the third going Pyfer's way with Hermansson. So I wouldn't want to put my money on decision. If I'm not going to be able to, get some good profit off the money line and you're looking for a prop, that plus 100 for Pyfer by KO TKO is looking like your best to me.
I agree. I'm on the Pyfer knockout side also. Looking at it, there's 2% of sharp money coming in on Pyfer, but that is because there's 93% of bets and 95% of the money. Pyfer is a big time favorite in this one. That I saw interesting, this is set at 2.5 is the line. Kind of feeling under 2.5. It's minus 160, but I think the way that we were talking, you think they get it done before 2:30 in the third, Bobby?
This fight has the most upset potential, I feel, on the whole entire card. So, yeah, 2.5 rounds is a good litmus test for this. Anything over 2.5, like I said, I'm starting to rapidly lose my faith in Joe Pyfer on this. This is just such a tough fight because it's another age-old story in MMA. The older gatekeeper guy gives way to the young, new, fresh blood, but they call him gatekeeper for a reason. Sometimes they keep the gate. And we always obviously talk about instances where they don't and they allow the young challenger to move on. But I don't know. This is a tough one. This is very difficult. And like I said, I'm really uncomfortable with the hype Pyfer's getting. But yeah, 2.5 is a good one. Anything over 2.5, I'm losing faith in Pyfer rapidly.
You better start listening to the Better in Green podcast. You will not regret it. Trust me, trust me, trust me. And hey, I'm Dean Blandino.
Welcome to Better in Green, eh? To Better in Green, eh? To Better in Green, eh? Listen in and cash out. That's what it's all about. Come on, let's make cash now. We always on spot and we cover all spot from the bottom to the top. Hey. Shout out to Ethan, shout out to Wyatt, shout out to Ben. Welcome to our podcast, Better in Green.